Our guest is Anjali Kamat, now a correspondent for Al Jazeera Fault Lines, a weekly investigative news program on Al Jazeera English and Al Jazeera America, which launched in the United States and is on cable channels across the United States. Anjali, the first piece that you did before Egypt was Bangladesh, Made in Bangladesh. We watched you in this documentary as you sifted through the fire, looking for U.S. labels. Can you talk about what happened there in Tazreen?
Yeah, so, there have been a series of disasters in garment factories in Bangladesh over the past several years, but there's been a lot of attention to it in the past year. We went to Bangladesh in June to look at what was happening with Walmart's supply chain in Bangladesh. And we were interested in a pair of shorts, part of Walmart's Faded Glory line, that had been found in the ruins of Tazreen, which was a factory that burnt down last November, killing at least 112 workers. So we spoke to workers, we spoke to activists, we also spoke to different people along the supply chain. And one of the things we found very clearly was that it is very convenient for large corporations and large retailers like Walmart to not know very much about their supply chain and to remain in the dark about that, because it gives them plausible deniability when there's an accident. And this is something that an auditor who used to work for Walmart told us. It's something that advocates in the U.S., like Scott Nova from the Workers' Rights Consortium, told us, and it was played out by what we saw in the supply chain in Bangladesh. I mean, at the very bottom of the supply chain, what we found is that there's very little oversight, and you have factories that are basically in people's backyards, in their apartments. And large corporations pretend to know nothing about these operations. But this is the building blocks of the garments that we all buy. And it's not just Walmart. What we found is we ended up in a small finishing house where garments are finished. They're sort of trimmed and the buttons are put on, the elastic band is put on. It's the final step before the garments are shipped out. And we found this small finishing house with, one small window, bars on the windows, no fire extinguisher, just a thatched roof, about 25 young girls and boys working there on Old Navy jeans. And we found children as young as 12 putting in elastic bands into Old Navy jeans. When we took our findings to Gap Inc., they denied... Which owns Old Navy. They denied any connection to this finishing house, said they didn't know about it, and claimed that the products were either counterfeit or had been improperly acquired. But we collected tags, Old Navy tags, at the finishing house, and we matched the barcodes from these tags to products that were being sold at Old Navy stores in the U.S. So, Gap's claim that these are counterfeit really should be called into question.
And what about the attempts or the publicized attempts, especially by European manufacturers, to institute new standards for the factories in Bangladesh? What were you able to see in terms of whether there's any real progress or change in the way that the manufacturing end of this worldwide garment industry, so much of it centered in countries like Bangladesh? What's happening there?
Right. I mean, so the garment industry is a backbone of the economy in Bangladesh. And, everybody wants a job in the garment industry. And, that's something that needs to be said. With respect to the brands, I mean, you've got two different safety accords now. The European retailers, signed on to one safety accord. Walmart, Gap, and other American retailers refused to sign on to that and came up with their own accord, saying that this was the best guarantee of worker safety and building safety in Bangladesh, and that they're going to begin all these inspections of factories in Bangladesh. Now, just earlier this month, there was another fire at a unit that had clothes linked to Walmart. And at least 10 people were killed in this factory fire. And Walmart claimed that this particular unit, I think it was a dyeing unit, wouldn't fall under their inspections. So there's a lot of gaps that are still not going to be included in these new safety accords. And they don't really say very much about paying workers more, about treating workers with more respect. I think it's important to remember that it's been almost a year since the Tazreen factory fire. At least 112 workers were killed. Walmart shorts were found in the rubble of the factory. There's been no compensation paid by Walmart to any of the survivors. to any of the victims' families. And they're still living in the shadow of this factory.
Anjali Kamat, we want to thank you very much for being with us as you continue to do your investigations, and you can check out Fault Lines at Al Jazeera America on your local cable company as it broadcasts now all over the country on the former channel of Current, which Al Jazeera bought. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. As we move on now to a very interesting study that has just come out. Juan?
Well, new research shows that many so-called experts who appeared on television making the case for U.S. strikes on Syria had undisclosed ties to military contractors.